Let's talk state license plate designs. North Carolina. Their whole design is intended to commemorate the Wright brothers' flight tests at Kitty Hawk. They do this with a picture of the famous Wright Flyer and the motto, "First in Flight." First in Flight really rubs me the wrong way. I think it misrepresents history, it claims the work of the Wright brothers without really crediting them, and I think the flight trials at Kitty Hawk feel more like state trivia than a relatable point of pride for modern North Carolinians. First in Flight disrespects ancient insects, hot air balloons, and pioneers in gliding. What they really mean to say is first in manned, heavier than air, powered flight. And even that is a bit contentious if you look up Richard Pierce and Clement Ader, who both probably had successful flights in that category before the Wright brothers. The topic becomes really sticky when you ask yourself how you define a successful flight. How high? For how long? Do you think landing intentionally is important? Does the aircraft have to not be broken afterwards? The Wright brothers flew their Wright Flyer 4 times outside of Kitty Hawk, North Carolina on December 17th, 1903. The first 3 flights lasted 12 to 15 seconds. The 4th flight lasted about a minute. All of the flights were bumpy, about 10 feet off the ground, and none of them featured an intentional landing. The 4th landing caused minor damage to the structure of the Wright Flyer. I don't want to disrespect this accomplishment. In hindsight, this was a major stepping stone in the history of aviation, but when the Wright brothers contacted their local newspaper, the Dayton Journal, about their historic flights, the Dayton Journal refused to run the story, saying that the flights were just too short to be considered important, and their request for a patent was rejected the next month. It's clear to me that it was all the work before and after the flight trials at Kitty Hawk that cemented the Wright brothers as iconic American inventors. They lived and worked in Dayton, Ohio. One of the main reasons they chose to test in North Carolina was because of its remoteness. They didn't want any reporters intruding on their tests. Over the next handful of years, the Wright brothers would continue to test airplanes in Ohio, eventually achieving consistent half-hour flights with safe landings. They were also awarded a patent. They achieved a legitimacy that wasn't present at the Kitty Hawk flight trials in North Carolina. So when I see First in Flight on the North Carolina plate, it really feels like they're trying to cash in. They're claiming this title of First in Flight that is really kind of dubious to begin with, and it feels more like they're trying to take credit rather than giving credit to the Wright brothers. And I just don't think that historical trivia is really the best angle for a license plate design. You want something that evokes a sense of state pride in the people that have to see the plate every day. I just don't think the average North Carolinian cares that much about the Wright brothers, to be honest. What would really do it for me is if going to see the Wright brothers memorial was a universal North Carolinian experience. We all have those state attractions that are popular spots for a summer family outing. Maybe the Wright brothers memorial should let parents sign a waiver to let their kids attempt to fly a rickety wood and cotton flying machine. That way, when they see the plate, it stirs up some strong emotional memories of the time as a child when they felt an extreme sense of freedom piloting an airplane before crashing it and breaking a bone. That would make this plate super relatable. I think the biggest irony of the whole discussion is that First in Flight isn't even North Carolina's state motto. It's est quam videri, a Latin phrase meaning to be rather than to seem, which I think is some advice that they should take with their next design.
Boom. Roasted.
And they really have to get rid of this transparent red text. It's so ugly. But you know who really doesn't like First in Flight? Ohio. Ohio is where 99% of the Wright brothers' airplane inventing happened. And North Carolina is over there taking all the credit. So unjust. So Ohio starts running plates that read Birthplace of Aviation. While it's less egregious than First in Flight, I feel like Birthplace of Aviation is still kind of a miss for me. I think it runs the risk of sounding like Ohio is the only birthplace of aviation, and that all air travel can be traced back to some common ancestor in Ohio, which is simply not true. What's more true is to say that Ohio, and even more specifically Dayton, is the home of the Wright brothers. Compare First in Flight and Birthplace of Aviation to Illinois' slogan, Land of Lincoln. I think a big thing that Land of Lincoln does is to say the name of the person that they're honoring. I'm honestly starting to wonder if there's some legal or licensing issue with putting the Wright brothers' name on these license plates, but imagining that these states care so much about the Wright brothers' accomplishments, but refuse to pay the Wright brothers' estate would be even more baffling. Let's look at Ohio's current license plate. It's not the worst design out there. It's maybe a little busy, but it certainly has a cheerful mood. The city skyline doesn't seem to be based on a specific city, maybe pulling buildings from across Ohio. I'm a big fan of using the state outline as a logo here, and I think the Wright Flyer pulling the Birthplace of Aviation banner is nice as a small element in a larger plate. Embarrassingly though, when this plate was first revealed, they had the Wright Flyer flying backwards, leading to this tweet from North Carolina Department of Transportation: "They wouldn't know, they weren't there," which embodies the little stinker attitude that North Carolina takes on this whole Wright brothers issue. But where this new Ohio plate really shines is in comparison to their previous plate.
It's just so horrible.
Hello, dear viewer. I know we're pushing 5 minutes here, but there were a lot of topics I didn't have time to touch on. The history of aviation is super interesting, so if you feel like it would be rewarding to learn more, I've prepared these adventure hooks for you to do some self-paced Wikipedia surfing. And of course, thanks for watching.